It has been a wild night. Let's take a look at the map once again. We feel as though we've been stuck in new time now. Donald Trump with 244 electoral votes, Hillary Clinton with 215. Again, all of these states that you see that are not colored in red or blue, those are the states still outstanding. And again, they are too close to call, and they will determine who the next president of the United States is.
And only a very thin margin separates both candidates in those states, and it appears for now Donald Trump has a slight lead in all of those states.
I think New Hampshire has just again gone to Hillary Clinton, just slightly, but that one's been wavering back and forth throughout the night. But again, we're still waiting on all the votes to be counted. And again, these states, very critically important for Hillary Clinton, who most people before today thought was just going to sweep this thing. It was going to be over early. It's not going to be over early. It's going to be over very, very late. And we're going to have to wait until every vote is counted.
That's right. One poll just less than 24 hours ago had Hillary Clinton winning, at the 90% chance of Hillary Clinton winning this election.
Yeah, it's kind of gyrated all over the place tonight. Let's check back in with Anna Naidu, who's been monitoring things for us and been talking to Robert Moran, who's been giving us some insights into what the voters are doing. And, you know, and one of the things that Robert's been talking about is Hillary Clinton really got the votes that she wanted tonight, but it just wasn't enough in some of these states.
Right, thanks, Mike, and Robert is here with me. You know, it's just 1 a.m. here on the east coast of the United States. I had expected to be at home. Thought this would have been called about 2 hours ago. But you say this is going to be a long night, possibly a long week.
It's going to be a very long night. I mean, I think if you look at New Hampshire, we're going to go to recount. I mean, it's teetering back and forth, 10 votes here, 10 votes there. Let's look at the big picture here for a second. This is a historic, majorly, hugely historic election. Hillary Clinton is still, I think, likely to win the popular vote when all the votes in California and the West Coast and Hawaii are counted. I think she wins the popular vote by maybe 1 million, give or take. But it looks like he wins the Electoral College here. I mean, he's ahead by enough, I think, in Pennsylvania that he wins. And this very much looks like a historic and possibly realigning election. The Midwest has gone for, and the Great Lakes industrial states have gone for the Republican nominee in a way that suggests they have a way to reshuffle the map. You know, we've been talking about the Sun Belt and Latinos, but it looks like these, you know, older line white states are shifting because of the blue collar protectionist rhetoric in large measure that Trump has used. And I think the Republican Party is in some ways going back in time to when it was a nationalist, populist, protectionist, generally pro-business, but not enormously so, party. And I think you're going to see Republicans embrace that populist position because it works, and they're pragmatists. But, you know, let's talk about some of these other races really quick. Michigan could still come home for Hillary. I think Wisconsin is likely to go to Trump, and I think that then ends it. New Hampshire goes to recount. Pennsylvania looks like there's Trump, but these are all very, very tight races. And if you look at how Donald Trump is winning these races, he's actually maximizing his vote share among white working class voters, especially in rural areas. So look at Pennsylvania. In Philadelphia, it looks like Team Clinton turned out what they needed to pull it out. But remember, there's a sea of red rural area in Pennsylvania, a lot of small little towns, and those overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. And so all those little towns, rural towns, overwhelmed the margin that Team Clinton built up in Philadelphia. And you may very well see that in Michigan as well, and that's what you saw in Ohio. And that redraws the map in a very significant way. I think Democrats are going to try to rediscover what the white working class looks like.
And when you talk about these rural areas in places like Pennsylvania where the white rural vote came out for Donald Trump, are these places where people do not traditionally vote?
No, they do. I think what happened is they voted in larger measure, and more of them flipped over to the Republican side.
So they switched parties,
yeah,
right?
It looks like some did. This feels very much like the Bush-Gore 2000 map, but just a little bit, doing a little bit better with white voters. I mean, if you look at it, the formula here is basically Bush-Gore with a little bit more white vote, or even, you know, Bush carries a little bit more white vote. And I think that's what you're looking at here.
You know, there'll be lots of hand-wringing, lots of analysis taking place tonight in the course of the next few weeks and months, of course, and what went wrong for Hillary Clinton. President Obama and even First Lady Michelle Obama identified themselves very closely with the Hillary Clinton campaign. They campaigned for her. To what extent, then, was this a repudiation of President Obama?
Well, the interesting thing is his approval rating is not that bad right now,
right.
And this is a very close race. I think you're going to see a Trump presidency with a Republican Congress investigate the Obama administration on the way out the door. I think they won't be able to help themselves on that. And I think there'll be quite a ruckus on that. I mean, the fact is, you know, you now have a Republican House, and the House Republicans lost very few. A number of folks that were deeply on the bubble won. Barbara Comstock in Northern Virginia won, pulled it out. So you have a pretty unified House Republican team with very few losers. The Senate Republicans maintain control, and they have a very good election cycle coming up in 2 years for them. And it looks like they have a Republican president. But it's not a Republican president we've been used to seeing. Yeah. And I think there's a Trump Republican brand that's somewhat different from the classic Republican brand. It's going to be very interesting to see how this is sorted out on the policy side.
Now, something that's very important here in the United States, and that is, of course, the president, whomever is in the White House, gets to nominate Supreme Court justices, U.S. Supreme Court justices. Very important branch of government. The Senate, of course, is that.
Right. I mean, this is a Democratic nightmare. And, you know, a Republican dream come true. I mean, I think, you know, there are a very large number of conservative Republicans that were not voting for Trump to support Trump. They were voting for Trump because of the Supreme Court issue, or because they just could not stand Hillary Clinton. And I think they're going to get what they want. I mean, their pound of flesh is conservative judges, and I think Trump gives them that. The interesting thing to me now is TTIP, TPP, NAFTA, all these trade deals. He's locked in to trying to rewrite or attack these trade deals. I have no idea who his U.S. trade representative now would be, assuming, I mean, it looks like he's going to win, assuming he wins. Who his U.S. trade representative is would be someone who is trade skeptical, I would imagine, and wants to extract much better deals, theoretically. Right. And that would be very interesting.
Yeah, and the implications of a conservative Supreme Court for things like Citizens United, that's campaign finance, Roe versus Wade, the abortion debate, a whole host of things, and now up in the air.
Yes, I think some of the other interesting things, the NRA is a big winner tonight.
Right.
A big winner, very big winner. I think small business will end up being a big winner. I think populist Republicans will want to do everything they can for small businesses, and I think they might even take some measures that are populist and somewhat anti-big business. This has been a long time coming in the Republican Party. In the mid-2000s, you had a lot of conservatives feel like they gave too much to big business and feel like big business was actually trending towards the Democrats. So I think that could very much happen. I think the budgetary issues are very complex, because how you come close to balancing the budget and cut taxes and do these things is a very open question. And then finally, we have Obamacare. And there are a lot of promises made about repealing and replacing. Well,
they can do that if they have Congress and the White House. Robert Moran, thank you again. Let's go back to Mike and Elaine.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and it's worth noting the U.S. Ambassador to China, Max Baucus, is weighing in. He says the world's most important relationship between Beijing and Washington will remain stable regardless of the outcome of this election, obviously trying to dampen any fears there, because Donald Trump, one of the things he's talked about, a 45% tariff on Chinese goods imported to the U.S. In another area where we've seen clashes between the United States and China on a number of issues, of course, South China Sea being one of them, cybersecurity another. But one area where the U.S. and China have cooperated is the climate deal, the Paris climate deal. And he says that's getting ripped up as well. We know that they're meeting in Morocco right now to talk about that. So obviously China very interested in this outcome as well.
That's right. And Max Baucus, as you mentioned, speaking there. But if Trump becomes the president, he may not hold that post for much longer.
Nope. Tian Wei is in Beijing with thoughts for us now. Tian Wei.
Thank you, Mike. A lot of uncertainties there, as you guys just mentioned. Yes, indeed. With me, Einer Tangen. Yang Xiyu, shed some lights for us. First question for both of you. We've seen some bumpy starts when a new president of the United States of America comes into the office and then smooths up. But the thing is this time, if Donald Trump will be the president, gonna be similar, Mr. Yang?
Yeah, the similar way, but with a bumpier, even a little bit longer period because of, from American reason, uncertainty of Trump's national security team and a very unique vision and concept of the international policies from Trump. But for Chinese side, we have been familiar with both Republican and Democrat presidents. However, Trump is not the typical Republican or pure Republican.
Trump Republican, as they are even being given a title. What about you?
Definitely very bumpy, but I think what you're going to see is continuation of a China bloc being formed, especially with the EU. Remember, the EU and the US are direct competitors. Everything we make, they make. So therefore, them coming into a zone of stability, especially with the Belt and Road Initiative and these things, I think it bodes well for a new alignment economically.
You're really leading us to another question, which is TPP, at least according to campaign rhetorics by Mr. Trump. That's not likely to be on his agenda at all, to say the least. So, does that provide alternatives and also opportunities for the other global and regional trade mechanisms? For example, OBOR, RCEP, proposed by China and some of the emerging and developing countries, likely to be in a major role, or more at least, than they used to be, Mr. Yang?
Well, certainly there have been some alternative options if Trump drop off free trade and investment mechanism multilaterally. And even with the United States, I don't think Trump will completely give up the free trade and investment, because that is a fundamental driving force for sustainable American economic growth. For example, BIT. Between China and the U.S., that will be continued.
Bilateral investment treaty, just to explain to our viewers worldwide.
Yeah.
But will that be the case? I mean, he came into the office, I mean, if he has the opportunity to become the U.S. president, by saying that he is against the global trade, he is bringing quote-unquote manufacturing jobs back to America.
If he doesn't deliver, he runs risking a credibility gap. Remember, he's running from the outside. He said Washington never delivers, they always lie. If he does not deliver, he's going to have a short 4 years.
But he does have a few other facts he can share with his constituency. For example, even the battling state of Wisconsin, $3 billion US Chinese investment, creating jobs over there in that state. These facts have not been revealed to the American voters before the election. Will Trump, if he comes to the office, have a change of mind, be able to do that?
I think the reality will change Trump's knowledge and views about China, about ties between China and the U.S., especially in terms of bilateral investment arrangement. I believe Trump will got a positive position towards that.
Okay,
well,
if he does not deliver, you can count on in 2 years from now that the House and the Senate will change.
But this time you see almost a landslide victory so far.
But
both the White House campaign and also in the Congress, both Senate and the
But
House of
anger and
Representatives.
frustration, if they are not satisfied, they will quickly switch to the other side. He will be considered a traitor to them if he does not follow through on it, because he wasn't political about this. He said very correctly, I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to do all of these things.
Bilateral investment treaty, both of you mentioned, BIT, that is one of the very important factor that's likely to help us understand what's next for the bilateral trade and economic ties between China and the United States. Ambassador Baucus earlier, as our colleague in the United States mentioned, was talking about stable relationship. That's what he would do as the ambassador to China. He, in an exclusive interview with me earlier, had been talking about building grassroots exchange. He said that is the fabric. But of course, when rhetorics are really strong, sometimes this fabric would get certain kinds of damage. Mr. Yang.
I think the grassroots exchanges will be more and more important between the two countries. Previously, the ties between the two countries mainly rely on the elite level exchanges. So I think with the new administration getting the new type of exchanges will be growing very fast. That will contribute very uniquely to the new type of relationship between U.S. and China.
I don't think that is going to be necessarily a top priority for China. Remember, it takes two to negotiate. With the current situation worldwide, you've just been hearing about the major concern everywhere. This is an opportunity for China to make inroads. They'll be a bastion of stability, planning, rationality, as opposed to emotionality, which seems to be ruling a lot of democratic races.
Scrapping off the old Washington playbook, that's the word used by some of my American colleagues, but we see it is not just the playbook, but also for the international community as well. Several words to share with you: deglobalization, anti-establishment, a rise of populism, all of this. So how is this likely to, in a way, impact how others are seeing America? And as a result, what does that mean, might be, for China, Mr. Yang?
Well, if Trump really bring about what he said during the campaign, that would be disaster for China's economic ties with Asia, not only with the U.S. but also with any country else. However, I believe there always been the gap between what he said and what he will do in the White House. So the task and the issue for China is how to deal with Trump to reduce the negative effect and put U.S. towards the positive cooperation with China.
I think that over the next 3 to 4 months, people are going to be looking very carefully at the policies he assembles and the team that he's putting together, because that's going to give an indication of where things go. I don't think that he has any political maneuvering room to back off on the majority of the promises he made.
This is possibly one of the longest nights of U.S. presidential election that I have witnessed as a journalist since the 2000 Florida recounts. That, of course, is one of the most dramatic moments any time you can find in U.S. history. Having said that, though, how much did they say about the divisiveness of this country, of the United States of America? And eventually, whoever is coming into the office in the White House, would that be able to push the policies forward, given it's such a divided country?
Well, the short answer is no. This is a black eye for America. You had a very divisive campaign, two deeply flawed individuals, and also for democracy. Because when people around the world are looking at a system that's supposed to develop a leadership or select leadership, this is not necessarily something that they would want to go through themselves.
Not only for the U.S., but also for the rest of the world. We are always saying this, that this is important. This election, the Americans have to come to realize what kind of country they are having right now. They have to reconcile all the conflicts within. But for the elections next year, many countries in Europe, for example, whether it is congressional election or the presidential election, is this going to be a domino effect? As we see Brexit, we see Mr. Trump likely to be the U.S. president. I would like to use this word now. And is it like to me a domino effect? What would that mean?
Well, quite varied. In Europe, to some degree, the domino effect will be very obvious. But in Asia, for example, next year, South Korea will also have a presidential campaign, quite a different style of changing. Changing is the same keywords, but changing in different format.
This time, we see a lot of wrong information. The polls, really, eventually the result has not indicated the polls are in any way correct. We will see in American media reports about likely who's going to have an upper hand. But obviously this time, as we see the numbers, difference is quite sharp already between Mr. Trump and Mr. Clinton, exactly the opposite, as many media suggested. What does it say?
Well, they discounted the fact that the white voters were so concerned about being anti-establishment, and Trump was able to reach out to his base, and he did so very, very well. But if you start looking at the long-term demographics of America, the whites in America will soon be the largest minority.
Yeah, with those changes, and with the changes that we say ideologically, anti-establishment, deglobalization, rise of populism, what would that mean for countries like China, emerging developing economies, when we are deciding on our policies, when we are reacting to what's going on in the rest of the world? Mr. Yang.
Well, during the past, the U.S. Played a leading role in the globalization, and China got a lot of benefits. If U.S. go to the opposite way, that will be a turmoil road ahead in China as well as the other emerging economies. So from now on, China has to be ready to find out our own way to go ahead towards the more positive globalization.
Now we are looking forward to the final result. We are still looking forward to some of the numbers coming in, but at this moment, whoever is likely into the White House, the margin is very small in many states. And some suggest it could be a long battle for days ahead if there's a recount. So what would this mean for U.S. politics? How we should react to that for the rest of the world here in Beijing?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of questions about the electoral system, because it looks that there might be a popular result for one candidate and an electoral landslide for the other.
Mr. Yang?
From foreign observers' view, firstly, the system of election has to be revised to some degree in the United States, but also such an uncertainty of every election from the United States affecting the other countries, we have to be more and more careful to engage with a 4-year or 8-year U.S. president.
Well, still, we use the same phrase. Still a lot of information uncertainties over there. Thank you so much, Einar Tang and Yang Xu. You stay with us for the rest of our live broadcast. And for now, go back to you in Washington, D.C., Elaine and Mike.
Yes, uncertainty. We're still stuck in neutral. Donald Trump with 244 electoral votes, Hillary Clinton with 215. There is some certainty, though. The Republicans will hold on to the Senate, which seems rather ironic because so many of these Senate candidates, congressional candidates, did not want to campaign with Donald Trump. There was fear throughout the Republican Party that he was going to tear them down as well, and yet they are going to retain the House, the Senate. There's a chance that Donald Trump will be the president. The Republicans will hold every...
Yeah, when was the last time we saw a Republican-controlled House, Senate, and the top office in the land?
Yes, but everything will be on their lap when that happens. Let's take a look outside the White House. We just got this videotape in, and we're seeing this for the first time. These are some of the people who gathered outside the White House tonight. I'm sure some of them hoping to celebrate a Hillary Clinton victory or perhaps someone else's victory. But what we see now is that as time went by, tensions continue to rise, and this is what we've been seeing, as I mentioned, on social media. You see people popping off at one another, and apparently Clinton supporters and Trump supporters gathering outside the White House, and both of them giving each other an earful as the media watched on, and let's see what happens.
So a couple of scuffles apparently, but no injuries, nothing major yet. But we were alerted to what was happening by Asiye Namdar and Jessica Stone, who are outside the White House and heard it all happen as it was taking place. Let's check back in with them to see what's happening there.
Elaine and Mike, behind us we still hear the chants. From what we understand, the chants we're hearing right now are from a group of Hispanics, Latino voters. They have a sign down there that says Donald Trump is a racist. A lot of chanting, a lot of signs. Another sign that we saw, United We Dream. That was another one. So this really clearly Donald Trump's tone and rhetoric and what we have seen in this very divisive election is really hitting home for some of these minorities, because Donald Trump has managed to offend women, he has managed to offend Muslims, he has managed to offend Hispanics.
And such a markedly different scene that we're looking at outside the White House right now than what we saw 8 years ago with the historic election of President Barack Obama, the first African American to be elected U.S. president. That was a time of rejoicing, and of course we do not have a call yet. We should stress that, but already the tone is very different outside the White House. 8 years ago, we saw so many people overjoyed, celebrating together, celebrating into the streets. One wonders if this election goes to Donald Trump, what the crowd out here will be like in the coming hours.
And that's a very good question, Jessica. I mean, if you are an immigrant in this country, if you are a legal immigrant in this country, if you are Muslim American, I think people are worried about their future.
And if you are a deferred action, which is this class of immigrants who are undocumented but have been allowed to stay under some of the executive orders of this president, you're even more worried because literally your life and your future and your family's future are on the line. And you know, I spent some time in Texas talking to Mexican Americans who literally went through the classes and took the test just to be able to vote in this election, and we thought at the time that that could potentially mean a Clinton presidency from some of these voters, but now we see quite the opposite so far.
You were looking over your phone. Talk about the House and Senate races. What are we looking for at this point? As Mike was mentioning, it looks like the Republicans will retain control of the Senate.
Yes, and of course, what that brings us, as Elaine pointed out earlier, is the sort of unprecedented parallel of what we had in 2008 with a Democratic Congress and a Democratic White House. Now we would, under that scenario, if Donald Trump wins, we would have a Republican in the White House and a Republican running the U.S. Congress, which basically means he has a blank check to accomplish whatever political aims he has. The trouble is, what would that be? We do know some of the things that he's proposed, but are these things that he can still build support for with some of the people in the Republican Party who, as Mike said earlier, have not exactly been clamoring to support Donald Trump on some of these more contentious issues?
Will the Republican Party ever be the same? It is awfully fractured right now.
Absolutely.
Mike and Elaine, back to you in the studio.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because after the 2012 election when Mitt Romney lost, they came up with this post-mortem. They said they had to do more outreach to Latinos. Well,
women,
yes, Donald
other
Trump
minorities.
did all the opposite, and tonight he is poised to perhaps win again. We've got these critical states still too close to call. We're looking at Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, New Hampshire, Alaska. Those are the only states out there. And right now he leads with 244 electoral votes to 215 for Hillary Clinton.
And as we've been mentioning, for Hillary Clinton to win or get to 270, she has to take all those states.
Yes, got to run the table. Rochelle Akufo is with us as well. And Rochelle, we're already seeing reaction from Wall Street. We're seeing the Mexican peso. It's been a shock to the system. The financial institutions didn't think this was going to happen. They're responding.
Certainly, along with the pollsters, a lot of shock all around global markets. Let's start with the Nasdaq and the S&P futures. They actually halted after they reached their 5% maximum drop. So that means it's going to be quite a headache for investors as they wake up tomorrow morning. We're also seeing that people are worried about what this is going to mean for trade deals, what this means for renegotiating with some of the key trading partners. In terms of safe havens, we're seeing a lot of people turning to gold. It's always that tried and true in terms of volatility. And another thing we're seeing is that the euro is actually up 2% against the dollar, and analysts actually think that the euro currency might be a good safe haven, especially at this time, which is interesting considering everything that was going on with Brexit, and now with this election and the election results leaning towards Trump. They're thinking this is much bigger than Brexit. The Dow lost 800 points, a drop not seen since the global financial crisis.
And a lot of economists beforehand saying that if there's a trade war, that the United States itself could face a recession. There's been a lot of worries about some of the steps that he wants to take on the financial arena. How does he calm markets if he does become the president of the United States?
Well, see, that's the issue. Because there's been so much uncertainty about his policies and about who he's going to put in place when it comes to dealing with other countries, a lot of people are really just kind of in limbo at the moment. They're not really sure what to do. This was not something that they priced into the market. Many of them, along with the polls, were expecting it to be a Clinton victory and weren't as jittery. But as we began to see, as more and more states started to fall towards Trump, we saw more and more jitters. We saw more and more drops. So it's definitely a case of wait and see. We're not seeing a lot of positive feedback at the moment. A lot of people are clearly very worried. And yeah, it's really just a case of everyone kind of holding their breath, waiting until they actually get the final outcome of these election results before making any moves.
Yeah, bleary eyes as we look at the Trump headquarters. It's getting late there. It's also late at Hillary Clinton's headquarters. Both of those in New York as we wait for these final votes to be tallied.
You know, we saw the markets drop a lot after the Brexit, and everyone was saying, don't check your accounts. And we saw a lot of movement with the currencies around the world following that. But then, how long did it take for that to recover? They rebounded within a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
A week or
That's
so.
right. There was that initial knee-jerk reaction. But at this point, with someone who could perhaps come into power and upset what the Federal Reserve is going to do, it's a lot more uncertainty, and we don't have a way of knowing just how long it's going to last.
Of course, we all remember he went to Scotland and said, now you can come to my golf course. It's going to be a lot cheaper.
Exactly.
I'm not sure how he sells it here in the United States if we see that sort of drop here.
Exactly. It's definitely something that they couldn't price into the market. Even as we look at some of the Asian markets which are closing, we saw Japan's Nikkei down 5.36%. So a lot of some of America's biggest trading partners really feeling the repercussions. And as you mentioned, the historic drop for the peso, and obviously a lot of the negative rhetoric we saw from Trump about Mexico really putting things in turmoil, and Mexico's central bank really trying to figure out what the next steps are going to be.
We just saw the camera pull out from those 4 words, Make America Great Again, which has been his theme throughout. Let's check in with Anaidu once again.
Thanks, Mike. We're waiting here too, like the campaigns are waiting. With me is Afshin Mulavi. And Afshin, we asked a question earlier on during one of our interviews, and that was, would the extreme right wing in Europe, in the European countries, which have also been gaining in favor among electorates in Europe, would they get a boost from a Donald Trump victory? And it seems they have. Marine Le Pen, who is the extreme right wing French leader of the National Front in France, has sent a message to Donald Trump saying congratulations.
Wow, well, already sent a message. Yeah, no, I think they will get a boost, but I think the establishment forces, and also some of the forces that are going up against them, will also get about as loud as a wake-up call as you can get, a much louder wake-up call than Brexit. So, for example, and they'll understand that they'll have to get out, because this was really turned out to be a turnout election, right? There was a low voter turnout among some of the African American communities, and so could Marine Le Pen win? I mean, at this point, who would have thought Donald Trump could win? And who would have thought that the Alternative for Deutschland, this right-wing nationalist party in Germany, would hold seats in 10 of 16 German state parliaments, right? So the political chess pieces have been totally disrupted by this in ways that I think are, of an order of magnitude higher than Brexit.
A lot of this has been blamed on the fact that globalization has not worked for a great many people, that they've been left behind, etc. So if we take what I would say, let's call the conventional, traditional political parties, how do they respond to that?
I think the traditional political parties are going to have to respond in this way. I think by and large, here in the United States as well, globalization, free trade is a net benefit for the United States. I still maintain that. Now, what we have not done a good job of here in the United States is there are always going to be winners and losers in the globalization process. What we have not done a good job of is providing a safety net for those who are losing, retraining programs, education programs for them to find their way in the new global economy. Because no matter what Donald Trump says, those jobs are not coming back. Those manufacturing jobs are not coming back to the United States. And so I think that's what needs to be done, is you need to articulate what's going on in the global economy, and then figure out ways to provide safety nets for those who are going to inevitably lose.
Right, we're also hearing that Paul Ryan, who is the leader of the Republicans in the House of Representatives, the U.S. House, has congratulated Donald Trump. So has Michael Pence, his running mate.
Wow.
So it seems they have the belief that He's won.
This is extraordinary. I mean, consider, where we are. This is June of 2015. This man, puts his name into the ring for the presidency, and to many, this was a national joke. And then he said, "We're going to make America great again." And so, one of the things we saw in this election is just how much frustration, anger, anxiety there is in the United States. And one of the things that's interesting, Anand, and I think you and I have talked about this in the past, is there almost is a hope gap now in between the United States and much of the emerging world. And there's this wonderful poll that the Pew Research Center does, and they ask people, do you think your children will be better off than you? Yeah. They asked Americans that question repeatedly, and the last time they asked that question, 2/3 of them said, no, my children will not be better off than me. When they asked that question in India and in China, almost 2/3 say, yes, my children will be better off than I am. So there is almost this hope gap developing where there's almost more hope in parts of the emerging world, which are arguably far, far behind the United States, and there's this hopelessness that is floating across the U.S.
Right, and another thing which would have to be re-examined very closely here in the United States are the polls. How did they get it so wrong?
I know, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a very capable professional pollster here with us tonight, but I think it's one of these things that as someone who's not a professional pollster, I'm going to look with a wary eye on all future polls, and I think that's going to be something that Americans are going to have to wake up to as well, looking with a wary eye at future polls.
Yeah, because we seem to be looking for angles and changes in every corner. I mean, if you look at the last few weeks of this election campaign, we get something that we talk about the October surprise here. There's always some surprise that comes up before the election. We had an October and a November surprise here. We had Donald Trump's, those tapes in which he talks in a very derogatory way about women, that came out.
That's right.
We thought, well, that's going to really hurt him, Then we had the FBI director come out and say, well, we haven't finished with this investigation into Hillary Clinton. There's more emails we found, etc. We thought that's going to hurt her.
Yes.
Then he came back 2 days before the election and says, well, actually, we found nothing there. Did any of that matter in the end? Because it all seemed to have been factored in, that the people made up their minds a long time ago.
It probably was. It probably was all baked in already. And one of the interesting things is when we would, among analysts gather and do October surprise or November surprise scenarios, the surprise that we would often come up with was an ISIS attack.
Right.
And the ISIS attack was supposed to be the thing that could propel Donald Trump, to the presidency. Who knew it would be, an FBI director opening, finding emails on Anthony Weiner, the disgraced former congressman's, computer.
I think the big surprise we got was the November surprise today.
Absolutely, yeah. This was the ultimate surprise.
Okay, Afshin, thanks a lot. I'm going to have to send it back to Mike and Elaine. I believe you have a new projection there.
That's right. We've got more surprises. Pennsylvania going in the Trump column. So now he has 264 electoral votes, winning Pennsylvania. Right before Election Day, he was in Scranton, Pennsylvania, giving a speech. You could almost see in his body language, he was cheering, but you almost felt like he didn't really think he was going to get it. But he was being buoyant, saying, hey, we're going to take Pennsylvania, we're going to take Minnesota, we're going to take all of these states. Well, in the end, he did take Pennsylvania.
And, Hillary Clinton had that huge midnight rally about 24 hours ago in Philadelphia with a lot of star power at this huge concert. Even had President Barack Obama and the First Lady there during, it looked like a victory rally, really.
Exactly. And what was interesting, earlier today they were saying they were going to drop balloons, and then they canceled that. So I wonder if they were starting to already see internal polling that things were not going their way. As we pointed out, Donald Trump now at 264, definitely within striking distance. When you factor in the chances are he'll take Arizona, that right there is 11 electoral votes. That would put him over the top. That may be why we're seeing Paul Ryan making these congratulatory calls to Donald Trump. And here we look at the Trump or Clinton headquarters, rather, and you can see just kind of a downbeat evening tonight. She was hoping to reference the glass ceiling at the Javits Center. That is not going to happen this evening.
We've been monitoring social media. I've been looking at all these pictures of people. Sean Kalos is there. He was mentioning this, but I've been looking at these pictures of people at that event that we're seeing there crying. Some people already leaving.
And you're already seeing it on social media, too. I just jumped on Facebook, and I'm seeing people saying, rest in peace, the United States. I'm seeing people saying, Kevin, I'm coming to New Zealand, I'm moving in with you. A lot of the same stuff, the rhetoric that we saw beforehand, but people very impassioned on both sides. A lot of and now we're looking at the Trump headquarters, where, obviously they're sleepy, they've got their red hats on, Make America Great hats, but undoubtedly very, very happy at where they stand right now. You hear the cheers. So they're looking at the numbers as well, doing the math, and it looks very much as though Donald Trump will carry the day.
Trump just a few blocks away, watching the returns and monitoring online. It appears they've been closing off streets in that area, perhaps waiting to see if he'll make his way down at some point this morning, because we are in Wednesday morning in the United States right now.
If he prevails tonight, it's going to be an interesting world stage, because we have Donald Trump, who said some pretty outrageous things by the measure of a lot of people. You've got Rodrigo Duterte in the Philippines, also people call him the Filipino Donald Trump. You've got Jimmy Morales, who was a comedian and a clown, who's the leader of Guatemala. It's just such an interesting landscape, and it just seems like there's so much rage. We see it with Brexit as well. A lot of people very unhappy out there, and they are going to the polling places and letting people know about it.
It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Is this a generational thing? We heard some of our guests tonight say it was the rural white vote who came out. Let's turn to Nathan King. He is there at Trump headquarters in New York to see what's been happening there. Pennsylvania, Nathan, bring us up to speed here.
Well, this night is quite incredible. It gets closer and closer. If you look at the margins of some of the states, we were just inside Trump headquarters, and there was jubilation, but their numbers have stuck for the last hour or so and haven't moved anywhere as we wait for these razor-thin margins in some of these so important states which will decide the presidency now to become unveiled. And they are not so far being unveiled. And some of the margins are so tight that we might even start talking about recounts before the morning as well. We've yet to hear and see anyone at Hillary headquarters. Donald Trump was meant to speak and be in the building. Everything is on hold until someone can see a path or is going to get to 270. Quite an incredible evening. We really didn't think this would happen. Donald Trump thought he would win, but many people around him were still managing expectations in the last 24, 48 hours. Remember, he famously said on his final swing through Michigan, he said, if I don't win this, it's been a waste of time, a waste of money, and a waste of energy. Well, he may well have won this. It's just quite an incredible feeling. I'm standing here right on the middle of 6th Avenue in New York. Normally it is really noisy all the time, but you can tell Americans are just numb. They're just waiting to see what's going to happen. They can't believe that they're on the bridge of a big political upset with Donald Trump potentially being president. Remember, this is a very democratic town, New York, outside of the Trump Victory Party headquarters there that it could be. And they're just all looking at screens, looking at their phones, working out where the needle is going to go. But as you know, the predictors, although they have got this wrong up until now, are predicting he is far more likely to win the White House in the next few hours than Hillary Clinton.
And Nathan, the extraordinary thing is the questions throughout this campaign seem to have been directed in the wrong way. People asking Donald Trump, will you accept the results? Now the question is, will Hillary accept the results? You were talking about some of the razor-thin margins, but that may not even be the case, because right now it looks as though Wisconsin may also go to him. It's getting very, very close, and as you can see, Donald Trump with a comfortable lead. He has 51% of the vote there. But Nathan, your thoughts on that?
The system is not rigged if you're Donald Trump tonight, that's for sure. He's been saying it's potentially rigged. I mean, if that's rigged, I'd take those numbers. No, but what it does show is that the polls in this country, which are, let's face it, the most sophisticated polling in the world, got it wrong. Who are they not polling? Is it because they concentrate on cities? Is it because they don't go into the countryside because it's too expensive? Are they relying too much on the internet, not on landlines? We don't know, but there are going to be so many questions answered because Hillary Clinton thought she had won this. They were quietly confident, and they have some of the best political minds in the business. And it takes an outsider, a businessman, no experience in politics. He kind of had a hunch that he could win this thing, and his hunch might be right. I mean, you almost feel like pinching yourself a little bit, don't you? But it's reality.
And Anand, one of the things, Anand's joining us here on the set, one of the things that I found interesting in this campaign is it was so different than any other presidential campaign we've witnessed, because it's usually a Republican running against a Democrat. But Donald Trump had staked out this point where he was running against the elites. It's all rigged. They're all in it. I'm your guy. You're the regular guy. I'm the guy who's going to go there and change everything. Everybody's corrupt. And he was making Republicans angry along the way, and yet look at what's happened.
He hasn't always been a Republican.
No, that's true. And, you know, he wasn't just running against the Democrats. He was running against his own party. Many in his own party actually disowned him, and they criticized him and said, we have nothing to do with you. I mean, this is the guy who was the total outsider, as you point out, came in, went up against the establishment, and it just tells us how out of touch, I guess, the media has been with what has been going on in this country, what people really feel. I mean, there's this wellspring of anger that we have seen now. We've seen it in the result tonight. There's this great American expression, of course, you know, Monday morning quarterbacking, which is, you know, looking and examining and soul-searching after an event. That will probably have started right now. And, you know, Hillary Clinton's camp must be asking themselves, what went wrong here? Was she too much of the establishment figure? Why wasn't she able to attract voters? Why wasn't she able to attract the young, etc.? All those questions must be going through their heads right now, because, as Nathan pointed out, you know, they're incredibly sophisticated polling companies in this country, and they got it wrong.
Well, he tapped into something. There's no doubt about it.
And we're watching Wisconsin, as Mike mentioned. So far, 96% of the precincts reporting right now in Wisconsin. We expect to get a result there next, and that has 10 electoral votes. So if Trump takes Wisconsin, as he has a slight lead there, then he reaches 274. Nathan?
And he's got 51% of the vote right now, a comfortable lead at this stage. But again, not all the votes counted. Nathan, as people look at Wisconsin there, what's the general sense? Do you feel of the vibrations coursing through that room right now?
Well, I've just stepped outside, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Throughout the Trump campaign, you know, Wisconsin is one of those blue wall they've been talking about. I mean, for a Republican to win Wisconsin basically means the whole map has changed. They were talking about, you know, picking up Florida, picking up North Carolina. Ohio was meant to be close. It wasn't even close. Wisconsin basically means that there is something deeply wrong with the Hillary Clinton campaign and something very right with the Trump campaign. Now remember, Wisconsin, nearby Michigan. Michigan, a deeply blue state, huge unionized labor. They've turned out for Democrats generation after generation. But something that Donald Trump has said, we'll bring your jobs back, we'll make America great again, something like that, has resonated with people who have either voted Democrat before and decided to vote Republican, or don't vote that often. There's going to be so much analysis to be done over the next 24 to 48 hours, because everyone, bar a few, Alan Lichtman at American University called it, bar a few, have got this totally wrong, including us as the media.
Yeah, he and his rallies, he has these chants that we've heard him over and over again. USA, USA. He says, what am I going to do when I get to Washington? And the people say resoundingly, drain the swamp, lock her up. All of these little themes, and again, how he identified the candidates along the way. It's just been fascinating to watch how he's demonized the candidates. It seems to stick. He says Jeb Bush has low energy. People watch him. They say Jeb Bush doesn't have any energy. It's just been amazing to watch.
Well, you know, Nathan mentioned the name of Alan Rickman, who got it right. He's got it right for the last few rounds of elections. At American University, there was a writer, a columnist in Boston, and he wrote this column about, I think, 6 or 7 months ago, and he said Hillary Clinton is not going to win this election. This is the year of the anti-incumbent insurgent. And as the months went by, so this guy is going to be eating crow one of these days, you know, because she's going to win by such a big margin. Look, only 6 or 7 hours ago, I was talking to one of our guests who was in here, and I was saying, What happens if Donald Trump doesn't concede tonight, after having lost? And he says, well, that'll depend by the margin that he loses by. I'm saying, okay, she gets 300 and some odd electoral votes, and he gets 200 and low 200s. Can he really get out there and say, I'm not going to accept the outcome of this election? Only saying that 6 hours ago. And it's all changed in the space of 6 hours.
We're seeing Hillary headquarters now, people kind of dancing around, clapping. But again, just look at the somber faces. They're already starting to realize what's happened this evening. And then it brings to mind the question, a woman president. There were people galvanized when Barack Obama ran, the thought of an African-American president. We just didn't see that sort of enthusiasm earlier in the election cycle when a lot of young women were supporting Bernie Sanders.
I think it's a point that Robert Moran made earlier on. The coalition was in place, and they turned out it just wasn't enough.
Yeah. Let's bring in Nathan King. He is outside the Hilton there in Midtown Manhattan. Nathan, we were just looking at some photos, some pictures, some video from the Hillary Clinton camp. They were trying to look more cheerful, but I think it's all where you are.
I've seen people throwing hats in the air, the Make America Great red hats in the air. They've been hugging each other. They feel vindicated, to be perfectly honest with you, because a lot of people have been laughing at the Trump campaign, even when he came within a few points of Hillary Clinton in the polls that have now been proved to be basically rubbish. So they feel vindicated. And they also feel vindicated this way, because if there is a Trump presidency, the Republicans will probably be in control of all the branches of government in terms of both houses of the legislature, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and the presidency. It is very rare for that to happen for a political operator, let alone an outsider, to have a clean sweep as well. The Republicans look vulnerable in the Senate. Now, what does this mean domestically for the US? It means that Donald Trump can start appointing Supreme Court justices. There's already a vacancy there. There is expected to be 2 or 3 more in the next 4 years. Now, while this is inside baseball a little bit for our international audience, the Supreme Court of the US decides everything from trade policy to abortion policy. So it can have an effect not just on the US but the outside world. So a Trump administration coming in with Republican allies in Congress can do far more than Barack Obama has done in the last 4 years. And remember, one of the first things Donald Trump said is he's going to rip up every piece of executive orders that Obama has given. That especially relates to climate change. Because remember, we can't call it a climate treaty when it comes to the Paris Accord, because that would have to have gone through the US Senate. It did not go through the legislature, so any president walking in can rip it up on day one. That's the sort of power a Trump presidency will have in January if it goes his way.
And Nathan, what does this do for presidential elections in the future? Because obviously he's thrown out the playbook. Everyone was talking about the Clinton ground game. Boy, that's going to be decisive. All of the things that the conventional wisdom has just been turned upside down.
I think what it basically says, and you know, I think it means that politics in this country has to change, because they are rejecting politics. We have a very successful woman here, a First Lady, a Senator, a Secretary of State, groomed for the presidency. Her husband was president as well, rejected, it looks like, by potentially a majority of the people. We have an outsider who is a property developer, inherited money from his father, but really a reality TV star, bit of a playboy on the tabloids here in New York. No one had really heard of him internationally until The Apprentice, where he's telling everyone you're fired. He took that style onto the stump, pointing fingers at people, calling people names, saying it was okay to Americans to feel resentful, perhaps, if your neighborhood is changing or you don't like the languages being spoken in the supermarket. Check out all this sort of stuff come out. I'm not making this up. We were at rallies. We heard it. We see it in print. What does that mean for the fabric of political discourse in the United States? Will it become a country that is even more divided in terms of the words it uses about each other? America's always prided itself on a melting pot. This is not a melting pot president.
No, he's not indeed. And right now, we're still keeping our eye on Wisconsin. The results imminent right now. He has a 3-point margin in the state of Wisconsin. If he takes those 10 electoral votes, which are at stake, and you can see his 51% of the vote right now, and there's 95, almost 96% of the precincts reporting at this stage, so very little votes left to count. If he gets those 10 electoral votes, it's over. Donald Trump will become the 45th president of the United States.
I'll definitely put him over the top by an extra two votes there.
I would love to know what Bernie Sanders is thinking right now.
Yeah.
You know, right at the outset of this election campaign, all these polls that were done showed him beating Donald Trump by double digits.
Yeah.
He didn't win the nomination.
He did not win the nomination. Let's check in with Asiye Namdar and Jessica. They are at overlooking the White House, where there's been a bit of a disturbance earlier this evening. Some protesters outside. I don't know if that's increased any or if it's staying about the same.
They're still out here, Mike and Elaine. We see a small crowd, but the chants are actually getting louder. And every time we hear the results of a more chants, and this is definitely, from what we understand, an anti-Trump group. They've been holding signs. Donald Trump is a racist. Blank Donald Trump, an expletive, not a nice word about Donald Trump. So this is definitely an anti-Trump activist. One of the things that we haven't talked about tonight is really the impact of third-party vote here, and also social media, how campaign with all the endless tweets he sent nonstop in the middle of the night, how that changed the course of this election and this campaign. Jessica, your thoughts first on social media. What's been the reaction? What are you seeing? Thoughts on how this campaign on Donald Trump's side, especially, not much on advertising in the beginning, but so much on social media.
Absolutely, and you heard Nathan earlier talk about the melting pot president. This is not a melting pot president, but he did make it okay to not be a melting pot president through media, through very direct, vitriolic, some might say racist accusations. And that's the tone and tenor of a lot of the social media reaction we're getting as well. Some just outright horror, parents saying, I don't know how to explain this to my daughter or my son. I don't know how to talk about this because I'm so disappointed in the outcome. Or immigrants, students, that are here studying in the United States saying, will I be allowed to come to class in the coming days? What will it be like to go over the campus when I look a little bit different than some of the other students? Will I be called names? Will I be targeted?
And I believe we're looking at live pictures from Clinton headquarters. A somber looking crowd there. They're trying to put on a brave face. A lot of people have gathered here.
And the song they're listening to, Never Stop Believing, seems a little bit more poignant right now, because it certainly seems very likely that we're going to see Donald Trump.
And here we go to Donald Trump's headquarters. He is about to walk on that stage. We are thinking at any moment now. He is just 6 votes away from becoming the next President of the United States. We should add, this is not popular vote, but 6 electoral votes. What a night it has been in this historic election. Stunning surprise. We knew this election was going to be close. We just didn't know how close it was going to be. The pollsters got it wrong. The analysts got it wrong. The media, us, we got it wrong. This is definitely unprecedented. No one expected this. In fact, it was Donald Trump that was repeatedly asked whether he would accept the results of this election. Depending on what happens tonight, perhaps a lot of people will be asking Hillary Clinton that question.
Absolutely.
Jessica.
We know that she had 2 speeches, one for acceptance, one for concession, but nobody in the media in particular, in the public sphere, thought that she would be giving that concession speech tonight. Now it looks extremely likely that she will be doing so. And that will, of course, set a tone for the administration of the next president of the United States. Will the country unite behind Donald Trump?
All right, Mike and Elaine, we'll send it back over to you.
All right, we're waiting with bated breath. Of course, Wisconsin, one that we're thinking will go pretty soon. Arizona definitely leaning in his direction. It is a Republican state, so that, of course, would also put him over the top. So we're continuing to monitoring this. There's still states out there that they can't too close to call at this stage.
But one of those states, and we already have a new president-elect, so that could be happening at any moment. It is now Wednesday morning in the United States. 2 o'clock in the morning, that is.
Yeah, very, very, very long night and morning. This is the Trump headquarters in New York City, Make America Great Again, his slogan that he started with early on in this campaign. A lot of people buying into that slogan, going to the polls, voting. He is now in the driver's seat. He has 265 electoral votes, only needs to get to 270. And Wisconsin right now in play, very, very close. As you can see, he's ahead, though, with 51% of the vote, 95, almost 96% of the votes counted. He gets those 10 electoral votes, he becomes president-elect. The 45th president of the United States will be Donald Trump.
Yeah, but let's look at the big map right now. A slight change there, and the numbers, they've been pretty steady all night long, but we have Donald Trump with 265 electoral votes, Hillary Clinton now with 218, and as Mike mentioned, we're just waiting for one of those states to turn, and
in the popular vote, still very, very close. Donald Trump with 48%, Hillary Clinton with 47%. But again, popular vote, that's not what matters. It's the Electoral College that matters on this night. And right now, as we said, Donald Trump in the driver's seat.
So some of these numbers going up, but definitely some other numbers around the world going down.
Yes.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to global markets. Obviously, originally they had not priced in the idea of a potential Trump presidency, and we saw the NASDAQ and the S&P futures halted after reaching their 5% maximum drop, something we haven't seen since the 2008 global financial crisis. That's very key. And also with that uncertainty, we also don't know what's going to happen with the future of the Federal Reserve. Trump has been very outspoken about Fed Chair Janet Yellen and the role of the central bank, and wondering if it's too political. A lot of people now wondering what's going to happen. The Fed, Bloomberg is already saying that analysts are saying that the chances of the Fed raising interest rates in December has dropped by 50%, most likely not going to happen. A lot of the trade partners, not really sure what's happening either. Some analysts, we have an analyst from Capital Economics saying that a Trump administration will quickly undermine relations with China and Mexico. We heard a lot of very negative rhetoric, so now a lot of trade partners perhaps wondering what their position is going to be. You hear this slogan, Make America Great Again. A lot of trade partners don't know what that means for them, though.
Yeah, well, his policy is not very well stated along the way. We've heard the slogans, whereas Hillary Clinton, reams and reams of policy papers. It didn't matter to the voters. They came out, they wanted to make a statement. Let's check in with Tian Wei. She's in Beijing, kind of get a perspective from China.
Thank you, Mike. With me right here in Beijing, once again, Yang Xiyu and Einar Tangen. Make America Great Again, that's the slogan repeated once and again. And yet the question is, when America, quote unquote, is great, what about the rest of the world? That's the appropriate question, I guess, Mr. Yang. Now we can ask. Only 5 votes short when it comes to electoral votes for Mr. Trump.
Yeah, for China, will seek for win-win results. When you got great again, China need great either. So the key question for both of the capitals to find a mutually accepted path towards the win-win role.
And now we are having live broadcast from the headquarters in United States. Miss Hillary Clinton is likely to talk.
It's been here a long time, and it's been a long night, and it's been a long campaign. But I could say we can wait a little longer, can't we? They're still counting votes, and every vote should count. Several states are too close to call, so we're not going to have anything more to say tonight. So listen to me. Everybody should head home. You should get some sleep. We'll have more to say tomorrow. I want you to know, I want every person in this hall to know, and I want every person across the country who supported Hillary to know that your voices and your enthusiasm means so much to her and to Tim and to all of us. We are so proud of you. And we are so proud of her. She's done an amazing job, and with you. I have to say this tonight. Good night. We will be back. We'll have more to say. Let's get those votes counted, and let's bring this home. Thank you so much for all of you have done. You are in all of our hearts. Thank you.
John Podesta of the Hillary Clinton campaign saying that they are not conceding, that they're going to wait until all the votes are counted, telling everyone to go home, get a good night's rest, basically pulling a page out of the playbook from 2004. John Kerry's campaign did the same thing. That was Ohio that was in question. Of course, 2000, Al Gore conceding, then calling Bush back later and saying, well, wait just a minute. And he wasn't very happy about it. And then famously, Al Gore said, don't get snippy with me. So this thing not over tonight, at least not from a Democratic standpoint.
Go into a battle there. Let's go back to CCTV's Tian Wei in Beijing with more reaction to that.
Thank you, Mike and Elaine. Of course, we heard Mr. Podesta, the Clinton campaign manager, talking about let's go back home, have a great sleep. Let's see what's going to happen the next day. What's going to happen the next day? That's really the big question. If Mr. Trump becomes the president of the United States of America 45th, he's likely to name immediately, once coming to power, 4,000 officials within U.S. government. It's likely to be a sea change of personnel. But what about the political direction?
The political direction will change. The question is, what is the Congress going to do with Trump? There has been a lot of, as has been discussed, a lot of angst about exactly what direction he's going. It's not a traditional Republican thing. But, you know, I was talking to somebody before, a Southeast Asian expert, and he said if Trump is president, it will end the Western leadership of the world.
Not only that, within the U.S. government, but also for the rest of the world. Mr. Yang, the world has been joking about throughout the campaign that this is not going to be the guy that's going to hold the key for the U.S. nuclear weapon. And this is likely to be the guy now. So what do you make of it?
Well, in terms of nuclear issue, that would be more complicated, especially compared with the predecessor, President Obama. He initiated a nuclear-free world. And for Trump, he has a much wild way of thinking. He even said even Japan and South Korea can develop nuclear weapons if they like. So I think if they really bring about what he said into the policy, that would be turmoils and troubles in the real world, especially the non-proliferation regime.
And now we are looking at the number 218, 265. Mr. Trump is only 5 electoral votes short before he becomes the President of the United States 45th. It is the time really that we can reflect back a little bit about these two candidates, what they have been saying and what have been their political record and campaign rhetorics. Back in the year 2009, Hillary Clinton made her first official trip to China in her role as the U.S. Secretary of State during President Obama's first term in office. During her stay, I sat down with her and she shared with us on the state of U.S.-China relations, and she has also some kindly advice for ambitious women. Take a look.
You know, when my family know that I might have a chance to see you in person, my 7-year-old nephew and my 97-year-old grandma, they were all very excited. And they said they wish you good luck. But do you yourself consider to be a good friend of China? And if yes, what does it mean?
Well, I am very committed to a positive and friendly relationship with China. Now, we will have disagreements. I mean, friends have disagreements. Countries certainly have disagreements. But I hope that as we work together, we will see more and more opportunities for improving not only our relations, but the lives of our people, and for our two countries to lead the way in solving serious global problems.
Well, that was Secretary Clinton during her first trip to East Asia during the first term Obama administration. Mr. Yang, 2 years after she said that, we can be friends and still have differences. Pivot to Asia, that policy was put out by her and some of her closest allies. What do you make now when a new president like to come into the office? Are we going to see very different rhetorics and real actions?
Well, the possible President Trump will go into the White House. That will be a big change of our policy towards China, both positively and negatively. Positively to China is the so-called rebalance strategy will be changed by President Trump if he wins, and that will make this region turn to the calming and stability. But in the trade area, I'm afraid there will be more troubles than this administration. So China has to be prepare the very more complicated situation.
Mr. Trump, in his campaign, talked a lot different ways compared to the previous administrations, whether it is Republican or Democrat. If that is like at least certain percent being implemented during his presidency, what's that going to mean for the American credibility? Not to even mention American leadership.
Well, as I said, I mean, it's going to be a very, very wild ride over the next 4 years. If in fact he is confirmed as President of the United States, there's no question that there's going to be a credibility gap. And as I said, the main point is, will the Congress go along with this?
A lot of big question marks. Once again, thank you so much, Einar Tangen and Yang Xu, for being with us throughout our live broadcast today. And for that, we are wrapping up here in Beijing. And back to you, my colleagues in Washington, D.C., for still some long battles to be fought. Mike and Elaine.
Well put. Tianwei, thanks so much.
We are now at 266 for Donald Trump, 218 for Hillary Clinton, and it looks like the party is over at Clinton headquarters in New York. We just saw just a few moments ago her campaign manager, John Podesta, coming out and announcing that they're waiting for more votes to come in. That
right. I'm wondering what's the motive behind John Podesta saying that you know they're going to say goodnight tonight, nothing more to say, and Hillary Clinton or someone from the campaign will talk to all their supporters tomorrow. As you pointed out, Mike, this has happened before in 2004. John Kerry did not concede on the night of the election. He conceded the next day. But what are they looking at here? I mean, we can only guess, we can only speculate. Are they looking at some kind of legal option here to perhaps contest some of the states?
Right. Recounts, perhaps, but they have to be very, very close for recounts.
That's the one thing, and it has. This is pretty cut and dry the way it's looking right now.
Yeah, you look at Wisconsin, you look at Arizona, and if he takes either of those, he's over.
He's way over.
Yeah, and both right now, comfortable margins for him. That's not even factoring in Michigan, which is also still in play.
Right. The irony of it all was that we were wondering whether Donald Trump would concede.
Exactly. And one has to ask, what went wrong? Because it seemed like she was in the driver's seat. WikiLeaks, we saw a lot of those emails coming out, which damaged her. James Comey, the FBI director, coming out and saying, we're going to look at these emails that have been found on Anthony Weiner's computer. All of this stuff, kind of the momentum shifted towards the end, but most people missed it. I don't think they saw it shifting this dramatically.
I think it's the point that our analyst made earlier on this evening, and that all that stuff was baked in. People had made up their minds a long time ago. The little things that happened in the last 4 or 5 weeks didn't really matter.
Well, the country is split almost down the middle. While he has a large electoral college lead, only about 1 million votes separate the two of these candidates. He has 48% of the vote, and she has 47% of the vote. The popular vote, that is.
Exactly. Very, very close there. But he's led all night long, even in the popular vote. And that was the other thing people were talking about. Well, she could win the popular vote, but not the electoral college vote. Right now, he's in the lead in both.
So we're taking a live look now at Trump headquarters in New York City, where the party is not over. I guess we're just waiting to see what happens there, if Donald Trump will show up. We're still getting some numbers back from Wisconsin. We hope to get something from them soon. And Arizona, there it looks like 80% of the precincts reporting, and
again,
Trump has a lead
he's got a 5% lead there. So, and that's traditionally a Republican state. So it would be very difficult for her to overcome that margin. And again, 11 electoral votes gives Donald Trump the number he needs.
That's right. He only needs a few left. What, 4 electoral votes at this point?
Exactly.
He's at 266. We need to get to 270 for him. Nathan King is outside that Trump party at the Hilton in Midtown Manhattan. We're getting closer, but news from across town there, Nathan.
Yeah, and you can feel New York is starting to react to this. We have cars driving past here on 6th Avenue shouting, "Trump, Trump." We're seeing people wave American flags, people wearing Trump merchandise. Someone just shouted out, "This is our Independence Day," which is a line Trump used in the last 48 hours. There's a real sense of Trump supporters, and I must admit there's not many here in New York, but they are starting to come onto the streets and start to celebrate. A little bit premature, but you've got to hand it to them. It looks like it could be very much their night. So that's what's happening right now. Everyone, of course, waiting in the building behind me, the Hilton Hotel, for Trump to arrive and give what will be the speech of his life. He said when he started running back in June 2015 that his wife told him if he ran, he would win. So he had thought long and hard about it. We kind of all just brushed that off. We shrugged it off and go, don't be silly. He went on to beat 16 other Republicans to the nomination, took the battle to Hillary Clinton in a bare-knuckle personal fight, and it looks like he has prevailed against all the received wisdom of the political class, the journalistic class, and others here in the United States.
The folks in Alaska vote, and their votes are the last ones counted, and generally everybody's in bed by that time. But tonight, they matter, and they are 3 electoral votes. And as you can see, Donald Trump with a big lead there. He's got 59% of the vote. If he gets those 3, he's even closer.
He's at 269, exactly. So then you're just waiting for 1.
Right. So, Nathan, the interesting thing, though, people are beginning to wonder, what will he do in his first 100 days? You know, you get this honeymoon period, and then again, let's talk about that. You know, Republican leaders in the Senate, when Barack Obama was elected, they said that they were going to obstruct him all along the way. Will we see the same kind of maneuvering on the Democratic side?
Well, let's think about it. The first 100 days, he has pledged to do what? He has pledged to rip up Obamacare, the big healthcare initiative of President Barack Obama, which has given insurance, although very costly in some cases, to tens of millions of people. That's going to be disruptive. He's also said there's no way that TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, is going to pass. He's also said he's going to build a wall on the southern border with Mexico and make Mexico pay for it. These are pledges. This is not political speech. This is stuff he said he is going to do. He's also said he's going to rip up the climate accord and bring back coal into the country and get rid of all the restrictions when it comes to environmental pollution. So he said he's going to do these things, and he now has a mandate to do it, it looks like, with, sorry, excuse me, a potentially friendly Congress as well.
Repeal and replace. He said it over and over again, but what does he replace it with? That's one of the questions. There's so many unanswered questions when he hasn't really spelled out a lot of policies. He's just talked basically in slogans.
Yes, and this is part of his appeal, is that instead of like Hillary Clinton and others who perhaps consider a policy and its effect on voters and where they might win and where they might lose, he just says what he thinks. And there's been a sense, definitely at his rallies that I've been to, that people want a plain speaker, that they're fed up with the sort of politics of usual in Washington, and they want to try something different. Now, this is radically different. And how this is going to play out when he's in the Oval Office is anyone's guess right now, but they are going to get something different. The big question is, can he deliver on some of these pledges? He's pledged to drain the swamp, get rid of corruption in Washington. He's pledged to build this wall. He's pledged to do lots of things. He's pledged to deport 11 million people who are here illegally. These are policies that are going to take a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of political capital. Is the country going to go along with them? The big thing to watch, of course, is the Republican Party that will control the House of Representatives and the Senate. Will they go along with him as well? It's going to be very, very interesting. I don't think we have seen a time like this in a modern American politics. And this is my 4th presidential election. And I thought the one in 2000 with Bush Gore was pretty animated, but this is quite incredible.
5 outstanding states we are still watching. He's leading in 4 of those 5.
That's right. We've been waiting for Wisconsin. 97% of the vote precincts reporting, actually. Trump leading by 2.71 points, and we do expect it to go, but still waiting there. 10 electoral votes if Wisconsin goes to Trump, which it looks like it may, which would put Donald Trump over the edge.
And Nathan, for folks who aren't familiar with the United States, this is that whole section of the U.S. that has suffered quite a bit with manufacturing hits. We're looking at Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and those people going to the polls in big numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there has been a transfer out of manufacturing into more service jobs. And what has that meant for the middle class in the last 20, 30 years? It's generally meant less secure jobs, not union jobs, and less pay. But what we have seen, of course, at the same time is an explosion in technology. And the problems with these new shifts in the economy is they haven't delivered wealth evenly. For every Mark Zuckerberg, you may have a town in Wisconsin or Michigan that doesn't work again. And what the US political system has not done well is retool the workers of yesterday for the jobs of tomorrow. But it's still one of the richest countries on earth. It's just the wealth disparity has been growing and growing.
We're looking at the Trump headquarters. John Podesta spoke to the folks in the Clinton headquarters, told them go home, get a good night's sleep. It's very late. They are not willing to concede. And so let's go back to the White House. Asi Namdar and Jessica Stone. I'm already losing my voice. We've been talking for so many hours. I sound like a pirate now, a frog.
Okay, we're losing our voice too. A lot of soul searching and reflection from Americans in this country tonight. No doubt, Donald Trump four votes away from the magic 270 needed to become the next president of the United States. Jessica, your thoughts for the night. Morning, I should say.
Not since 1928, almost 100 years ago, have the Republicans held the House, the Senate, and the White House. This is a sweeping mandate for change. We don't know exactly what it looks like, but we're about to find out.
What do people want to hear from Trump's speech? When he gives that speech?
I think more of the vision and how this country is going to be different under his administration than it has been in the past.
And perhaps
that's what they elected him to do.
This country. All right, Mike and Elaine, back to you.
One of the things I find shocking as we look at the Trump headquarters, they seem so subdued, almost shocked and stunned like everyone else. I think they went in there having looked at all the polls the same way, kind of feeling like, oh, what's going to happen tonight? And now it looks like their candidate very close to winning the election.
I have no doubt they will rush back to life if one of these last states here turn in the next few minutes. Wisconsin, we are also watching Alaska. Donald Trump, I think a lot of people would want to hear how he can bring the country back together again if he is elected president, because you still have half of the country wanting the other candidate, and he has offended so many people. A lot of folks online are worried about what the future holds for them.
That's if he wants to bring back the country together, because he might very well think, I don't need the other half of the country. I've got my coalition, the people that have supported me, and I will respond just to them. He hasn't talked much about bringing the country together, about uniting the country. Hillary Clinton has, but he hasn't. So we could be in for a very, very strange time after he's elected.
Let's head back over to the Clinton headquarters where John Podesta just told the group assembled there that go to sleep, go home. We're going to still count these votes. Sean Calebs, what was the reaction there when he made that statement?
Well, I think it was quite sobering. It wasn't very long. I think that perhaps some of the people who waited here, the better part of 8 hours, had hoped for something a little more positive. But fact is fact. It doesn't look good. You can't make up 50, 70,000 votes in some states with only 8 or 7% of the votes not being counted. He didn't say, hey, we're going to come back tomorrow and get him. He said, we'll have more to say tomorrow. So it wasn't like there was anything extraordinarily positive that one could say about this. He thanked Hillary Clinton. He thanked Tim Kaine. He thanked all the supporters. Did all the things that one should do heading to the podium as they try to rally the crowd. But not a lot of good news, Mike.
The Associated Press, the only organization to call Pennsylvania, and I imagine that's probably one of the reasons why they want to just sit tight on that. And again, as I said, this harkens back to 2004 when we saw John Kerry's group do much the same thing. Sean Calebs, thanks so much for your great reporting this evening.
That's right, 20 electoral votes in Pennsylvania. So that might be the reason, as you mentioned, they're holding off, waiting to see what happens there, because that could be a contested area.
We got about 20 seconds before we say goodbye. Just want to bring you back up to speed. Donald Trump at this stage, 266 electoral votes. Hillary Clinton, 218. Donald Trump poised to win this election and become the 45th president of the United States.
Thanks for watching CCTV's special coverage of the U.S. election.